Dempsey Pillot with FilmSpeak. It is a pleasure to be speaking with you, Adrian.
Hello, Dempsey. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm awesome. Let's just talk about Flashdance. 40th anniversary. When you were making it, did you think it would become as big or as iconic? I mean, not spoofed, but like homaged by Jennifer Lopez in a music video. Did you ever think it'd be as big as it is now?
Not really, no. There wasn't, I have to say, there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm really just before the movie came out. The studio, in fact, they sold off 30% of their interest in the movie just before it came out. So, and I couldn't get anybody on the phone. So I was dubious as to how it was going to do. And then it sort of caught people's imagination. It was funny, people would ring me up and said, your movie's out in Times Square and they're dancing in the aisles. They're dancing in the theater, which I thought was exciting, in the movie theater, that sort of thing. And then people would ring me up and say, they're wearing those T-shirts hanging off her shoulder. Have you been out? Have you seen it? And I hadn't actually, but I went out in New York and I did see it. It's funny, on Fifth Avenue. So it was exciting that people, I don't know, it caught people's imagination. I think it was Jennifer Beals, really. I saw the movie a couple of days ago and I quite enjoyed it. I was surprised. I quite enjoyed it. And it was, I think because of her, she has a kind of a childlike quality. I mean, she was only 17. She felt innocent and sort of enthusiastic and vulnerable, and I think that helped the movie really.
Now, I mean, no one knows your filmography better than yourself. Like this one to me, it sticks out like a sore thumb, because it seems like one of the I guess more like upbeat movies that you've done.
Yes.
But what drew you to the story? And what sets it apart from?
The main thing that drew me to it was that it was getting made. I sensed, I was told, they've got $8 million to make this movie, and I turned it down a couple of times. It was a lady called Dawn Steele, who's not with us anymore. Unfortunately, she was an executive there, and she liked my work, and she kept on saying, "You've got to do it, you've got to do it." And I didn't want to do it because I thought the script was a little silly. But finally, I could see that it was getting made, and I think you can't be too precious about waiting for the one you really want to do, And so I did it thinking I can make the dances interesting and fun and give it some energy, and I hope I did that.
You did. You certainly did. Now, what do you think, or do you think that this film has something in common with some of the other films that you eventually ended up doing, the Fatal Attraction, Jacob's Ladder, Deep Water, or do you think that it's just a stepping stone that helped you get to some of those films later on in your career?
Well, I think it stands up hopefully in its, I mean it's like a fairy story really, and I was surprised how many people sort of rang me up and said, it made me stick with what I really wanted to do, and in a kind of naive way, the people were. I don't know, they followed their dream, if you like, which it has that message, which is quite nice, I think. So, as I say, mainly what I wanted to do was I was interested in, for example, in doing a wet dance. And I just didn't quite know what the wet dance was going to be like, but I thought I really want to do a wet dance because, the water flying off the dancer will be funny because it would drench people in the crowd, in the bar or whatever. And also she'd look great with her skin would look good and all of that. But I remember I had a kind of an audition. I had to tell the executives at Paramount what it was going to look like, and they were all sitting on bleachers. And there was about 20 or 30 of them looking down at me. I was at the bottom with the girl, but it worked out in the end. In the end, I think it's memorable, that image, of the water dumping on her head, and
Yeah, it's one of like the most iconic scenes, if not from the '80s, of like film of all time. That's so interesting to me so a lot of thought went into that, and you were actually nervous about how the final product would come out.
Really, I was worried about the amount of water that was falling on her head. I was worried about breaking her neck. I'm almost literally. It was trial and error. I was trying to light the water so it came off like sort of sparkling, like jewels or something. And I was shooting it against the wrong backing. I was shooting against a white backing, which is insane because obviously the water wouldn't show against that. So eventually I got it right and turned around and shot it against a dark background and in slow motion and stuff, and it worked. But it was very much trial and error with the other girl. It wasn't with Jennifer Beals. It was with the dancer, who improvised a lot of stuff, like banging her hands on the seat, and the water flies up. And she was a very good dancer, really. I was lucky in a way because I had two people playing Jennifer, playing the girl. I had the dancer and I had Jennifer Beals, who had a nice quality, a nice sort of vulnerable quality. But she wasn't a dancer. She wasn't a great dancer.
All right, we've only got time for a couple more questions. I want to ask you about the soundtrack. How often do you get asked about, that song Maniac and the decision to include that on the soundtrack, how iconic it's become, almost just as iconic as the film itself over the years?
There was a guy that I really liked working with. He was the music producer, really, a guy called Phil Ramone, who was marvelous. He was a legend. But he was very receptive to ideas. He would, and I said to him, listen, I've heard a marvelous tune that Kraftwerk did, a German band called Kraftwerk, I guess. And I said, and they've got this thing in the rhythm that's like a bell. It's like bing bong, bing bong, bing, like this, you know what I'm saying? And I played it to him, and he said, good, let's use that. And that, that sort of bell thing in the soundtrack is good, I think, on Maniac. It helped it, I think.
Final question, and I'd be remiss if I didn't get a chance to ask this. So last year, you made your return with Deep Water after 20 years of not making a film.
Yes.
Why the gap, and should we expect you to make another film in the future, or was Deep Water your swan song?
No, I want to do another one. I've got another one that I really like called One Neck. It's called One Neck, and it's about a serial killer who goes to a party in the Hamptons. It's really quite good, and so I'm going to do that. I mean, I wasn't doing wasn't doing nothing for 20 years. I wanted to do a film called The Town that Ben Affleck eventually ended up doing. I really wanted to do it, but I held out for more money than they wanted to spend, and it was my fault, that I have 70 million or something to do it, because I thought it was a huge movie potentially. And they would just give me 50, and I should have done it with that. I'm stupid. So it's a terrible mistake.
You're not stupid. You are a genius, an unsung hero with a fabulous filmography. And Adrian, it was a pleasure to speak with you. Honestly, I feel like I'm talking to a legend. Cannot wait to see what you do next. Please don't wait 20 years to do it.
I promise.
Congratulations on the filmmaking 40 years.
Thank you. They're very sweet. Thanks so much.